Hey y'all, I am back with a new What's for Dinner, and I'm so excited to share this first meal because it was a new one for us that took very little effort, but it honestly blew me away. These are called sweet and sour pork chops, and I got this recipe out of my Taste of Home cookbook, but I also found it online, so I will definitely link it. But basically, I am just cooking up some boneless pork chops and a little bit of olive oil, and they have only been seasoned with black pepper. And when they were almost cooked through, I removed those to a separate plate, and now I'm going to get started on the sauce. So all that was a half a cup of water, a third cup of apple cider vinegar, a quarter cup of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, and a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. So, as you can imagine, this is a very strong and flavorful sauce, which is the reason I only season those pork chops with the black pepper. This is plenty salty. But I just got that combined, and then I made a quick cornstarch slurry with just some cornstarch and water. Added that in once it was boiling, and it instantly started to thicken. So I just kept on stirring to make sure that there was no lumps. And then I added in my pork chops once that sauce got thickened to my liking, including all of the juices that accumulated on that plate. I am going to go ahead and spoon plenty of that sauce over the pork chops so that they can have, the maximum flavor. And then I'm going to want to finish cooking these off, so I'm going to get my lid added on, and I let that sit, I think it was around 8 minutes, and that is it for these pork chops. I love that deep color and the fact that this just used very simple everyday ingredients. So what you serve these pork chops over is equally as important. So I tried out this Instant Pot Parmesan garlic rice for the first time, and oh my goodness, pay attention because this is going to be your new favorite side dish if you haven't already tried it. So basically, I just turned my Instant Pot onto the saute mode. I melted down 3 tablespoons of butter, threw in a few cloves of garlic, 1 1/3 cup of jasmine rice, some dried parsley, and 2 cups of chicken broth. I gave it a quick stir and added on the lid. You always want to make sure that valve is set to sealing so that it'll cook properly. And I'm going to set my timer for 6 minutes. As soon as that 6 minutes was up, I did a quick release to let out all that pressure. As you can see, that rice absorbed everything perfectly. And for the last ingredient, you just want to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I didn't have any fresh Parmesan cheese, so I just used the kind in the bottle, and it worked out perfectly. I fluffed that up, let that cheese melt, and that was it. Literally the easiest, quickest, and tastiest side dish ever. I'm obsessed. I'm going to be making this on repeat. As you can see, I poured some of that sauce from the pork chops over the rice that made it even better. I also made a quick side of just some frozen mixed veggies that I cooked on the stove with a little bit of butter, salt, and pepper. The pork chop was cooked to perfection. The sauce was out of this world. This is the perfect busy night meal because everything cooks so fast. The next night was another extremely easy meal. I'm going to be doing some buffalo chicken quesadillas. So I'm just going to boil up some boneless, skinless chicken breasts. As you can see, I have 2 in there. And I'm going to be sure to season the water really well. So I'm doing some Tony's Creole seasoning. I'm going to do some of this chicken bouillon powder and plenty of black pepper. I let that come up to a hard boil, and then I added my lid on, turned that heat down, and I let that simmer for around 15 to 20 minutes. Then I went ahead and threw it on in my KitchenAid mixer, and I let that mix for just a few seconds, and now it is shredded perfectly. This Frank's Red Hot Buffalo sauce is my absolute favorite. I didn't go too heavy-handed with it because, I have 2 little kids. Didn't want to make it too spicy or anything. And plus, I can always add more afterwards. But that is literally it. It's just some chicken and buffalo sauce. I didn't add anything else to that. Now, these tortillas, I talked about these in my last video, which was a lunchbox video. This is a new discovery for me. These are the Tortilla Land tortillas. I found them at Walmart in the refrigerated section, and they are the absolute best tortillas I have ever had. I don't think I can go back to anything else after having these. They are uncooked, so you do have to cook them, and it says how to do it on the back of the package. It's just 30 seconds per side, and I did go ahead and pre-cook those before making the quesadillas. I didn't show it, but as you've seen, I just added some butter to my pan, threw down that tortilla with some sharp cheddar cheese, a good layer of the chicken, some more cheese, another tortilla, of course, and I just let that cook for a few minutes on each side until it was nice and golden brown just like this. And I'm just going to use a pizza cutter to cut that into 4 sections. And to go along with it, I did a quick like street corn. So while I was boiling my chicken, I was also boiling up some corn on the cob. So once that was fully cooked, I made a quick little mixture of mayonnaise, sour cream, some lime juice, chili powder, paprika, some chopped cilantro, and some garlic. I didn't measure anything for that, but again, I will definitely link the recipe that I like loosely followed for it. And then I just sprinkled on some cotija cheese, some more chili powder, and some more cilantro. It's pretty messy to make, but it is always like 1,000% worth it. So, so good. As you can see, I've also got a little side of ranch to dip my quesadilla in. Just a very easy meal that it's always a favorite. We all love quesadillas in any variety, and we all love buffalo chicken. Next up, I finally made something that I have been wanting to make for a while. I'm going to be doing some cheeseburger egg rolls. So I started off by browning up a pound of ground beef. This is just an 80-20 variety, which is what I prefer to buy. Once it was halfway cooked through, I seasoned it heavily with some onion powder and several dashes of Worcestershire sauce. I just let that continue to cook until there was no longer any pink. Then I drained off the grease. So next, I'm going to be adding in some Velveeta. You need 6 ounces, so that is like 1.5 of these little packs. Now, I know that some people are strongly against Velveeta since it's so processed. So if that's you, you can definitely swap this out for like pretty much any cheese, and it will still turn out amazing. I did also go ahead and chop up some pickles. The Clausen pickles are our personal favorite, and I did dice up about 3 of the spears. So I just added that directly in that bowl of the cheesy ground beef, as well as 2 tablespoons of some yellow mustard. And I just stirred that together really well, and that is it for the filling. So these are the egg roll wraps that I buy. I think these are the only ones that are available around me. I was able to get these at Walmart, and it says vegan, but I'm pretty sure that all egg roll wraps are vegan, but you can totally correct me if I'm wrong on that. But now I'm going to get these assembled. I just put it like in a diamond shape in front of me. I put like a heaping tablespoon of that filling in the middle. I just folded it up, tucked in the sides, and then I have my little ramekin of water back there, which is what I use to seal it off, and that always does a really good job. So as you can see, that made 9 egg rolls. So just keep that in mind. If you are a larger family, you may want to double this recipe. So I have my skillet with a shallow layer of vegetable oil. I made sure that was really hot before I started dropping these in. I did have to do this in a couple batches because you never want to overcrowd your pan when you're deep frying, but I just let these cook for a couple of minutes on each side. I was sure to like set a timer, and I did try to get the sides as well for just a few seconds to kind of try and brown those a little bit as well, but I just let those drain off on a paper towel lined plate, and as you can see, they turn out really pretty, nice and golden brown, and this was just another meal that cooked up really fast. Love the flavor of these. I wouldn't change a thing. I especially love the pickles inside of them, and I don't cook with egg roll wrappers that often, so it was a really nice like change up. And I finally bought this secret sauce that I know so many people love. It's supposed to be like a Big Mac copycat sauce, but I honestly don't eat Big Mac sauce, and I honestly wasn't that big of a fan of the sauce, but that's just a personal thing. I'm weird about sauces. I just preferred to dip it in A1 sauce, and I just served it with a big side salad of lettuce, tomatoes, cheese, hard-boiled eggs, and some homemade ranch, and that was super good. This next meal is a special one for me. This was one of my favorite like childhood summertime meals that we would have every summer, where the main course was these half-runner green beans and new potatoes. This is the perfect like garden meal that I always look forward to, and it just carries so many great memories for me that I want to carry on. So I'm going to share with y'all how I make my coleslaw. So I do much prefer using like an actual head of cabbage compared to like the pre-shredded mixes. Like those are okay every now and then, but like I said, this is my preferred way, and I think it makes the best. So as you've seen, I did remove like the first few like outer layers. That's usually where the leaves are like damaged and like filthy. And I am going to be using only half of this head of cabbage. That's the perfect amount for us with plenty of leftovers. And I'm sure the way that I'm cutting this is going to annoy a lot of y'all because it annoys me too. This was pretty chaotic, and it's two things that I could have easily resolved. I know that if you put like a wet paper towel underneath the cutting board, it will keep it from moving around, and I learned that from a lot of you guys. I really appreciate that tip, and I know that I really need to start using it. And also, I was using a dull knife. I really needed to sharpen it. I have the tool to do that, and I just didn't do it. I am guilty of always doing things in a rush, always feeling like I'm in a rush. I know that I need to slow down, but I removed that core, and this step right here is very important. I think it's very important to like hand shred it with a cheese grater. If you have never done that before, it is such a huge game changer compared to like chopping it up with a knife. It just makes the absolute best coleslaw. It makes a huge difference. You have to try it if you have never done it before. But I got that transferred to a good size mixing bowl, and we do like to have carrots in our coleslaw. And something new that I have recently learned, usually when I make this coleslaw, I just shred my carrots like I do the cabbage with the cheese grater. And it turns out great, like it tastes great, but the only problem is it pretty much turns your whole coleslaw to this like orange color, and that just aggravates me. So I have learned that if you just take the time to finely chop up the carrots, it's still in the tiny pieces, but it doesn't turn your coleslaw orange. So I tried to like julienne these. That wasn't going too good since these carrots were on the smaller side. It is best to do that with a large one. So it was a little time consuming to get those chopped up, but to me, it was completely worth it. So I just got that added on in with the cabbage and gave that a quick stir. And now I am going to make the dressing. So you're going to need some mayonnaise. We are Hellmann's fans, but obviously use what you prefer. We do also really like Duke's. This is something that I don't measure anything out for, but if I had to guess, that's probably like a cup of mayonnaise. I always do a splash of vinegar, about 2 heaping tablespoons of sugar, and then I just season it to taste with salt and plenty of black pepper, and that is it. Very simple, and in my opinion, that is all that a good coleslaw needs. I know that sometimes my dad likes to add like celery seeds, and that is really good. I don't have any of that, but yeah, so it may look like you need more mayonnaise, but trust me when I say you do not, because as it sits in the fridge, it's going to thin out and it'll be perfect. So it's very important to let that sit in the fridge for a few hours before serving it, but the next day is even better. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how I made these green beans and potatoes. So like I said, these are called half runners. I've already washed these really good. These can be a little bit tricky to find unless you grow these yourself or know someone that does. At least where I live, I cannot find these in grocery stores anywhere. Any grocery store, I've checked them all, none of them sell them. But luckily in my town, we do have like a little store that sells fresh fruits and vegetables and just stuff that you can't find anywhere else. But if you don't have that, I'm sure like any farmer's market during the summer will have these. They are a little bit pricey, but like I always say, it's worth it to me. Like it's a really nice treat. You definitely want to make sure to remove the string. So I just kind of snap off the ends and peel that back on both sides. If you're not familiar with these, the strings are like not edible. And if you don't remove them, you will most definitely regret it. It will not be a good time. But if you have a whole bunch of these green beans, you will definitely want to gather around your family and friends to help you do this because it is time consuming, and it's what makes these so special for me because as a kid, me and my dad would go to my uncle's garden and hand pick these and then bring them home, and then the whole family would sit together and string and snap these, and it's just something that I really enjoy doing as a young kid. So yeah, I got those added to a large pot, got them covered with water, and I'm going to add half a package of this salted pork. And this is a meat that I'm not really familiar with. I'm pretty sure it's the first time that I bought it, but I talked to my dad, and that is what he said that he uses. But you can also use bacon if you wanted to. And if you wanted to make it vegetarian, you can just use butter. But I added a little bit of salt and a lot of black pepper. I let that come up to a boil, and then I added my lid, and I came in about an hour to check on them, and that is when I added in my new potatoes that I have washed and scrubbed really well. And then I'm just going to get my lid added back on, and I'm going to let that continue cooking for about 45 minutes. And by this point, everything should be starting to get pretty tender, but I want to be sure to cook off a lot of this extra liquid. And I'm going to do that by turning up the heat some, letting it come up to this like hard boil, and I'm going to cook it without the lid now. So to get it to the consistency that I wanted, it probably took like an additional 40 minutes. But this right here, this is perfect. It is pretty time consuming, but they are so worth it. And here is the plate of the garden cucumbers that I cut up, and I sliced a couple tomatoes. And these tomatoes, my dad and the kids actually grew together, so we have a huge abundance of those, and they are super good. Like, nothing compares to garden fresh tomatoes. Instead of making like regular cornbread hoe cakes, I got this idea in my head to try it out with this hush puppy mix. So I just got the Martha White package that you can find at most grocery stores. It's very affordable, and you can add either water or milk to it. I chose to do milk. Of course, you'll want to get that mixed together, and as that sits, it's going to get really, really thick. Obviously, since it's intended for hush puppies, so I actually ended up trying to thin it out with a little bit of milk, and then I added in too much milk, so I had to add in some flour to try to help the consistency. I thought for sure that I had messed these up, but it all ended up working out in the end, thankfully. But as you can see, I'm just frying these up in a little bit of vegetable oil, and I'm just letting those cook for a couple of minutes on each side. I'm basically cooking these up like you would pancakes. And y'all, these turned out so good. They cooked up great, and the flavor was amazing. I love that hush puppy flavor that came through. It went perfectly with this meal. So back to my plate. I did add some salt and pepper to my tomatoes and cucumbers, and then I added extra pepper on top of my coleslaw. And this meal just turned out so amazing. We like all thoroughly enjoyed it, and the leftovers were even better the next day for lunch. And I didn't show it, but for my potatoes, after I split them open, I like to add a little bit of butter, salt, and pepper to them. Now we are on to the last meal that I made in this video. I made a roasted red pepper pasta for the very first time, and this is such a great like meatless dinner option. So the first thing I did was get my spices measured out for the sauce. As always, the recipe will be linked in my description box if you want the exact measurements, but all that's in here is some ground mustard, onion powder, oregano, basil, salt, and some crushed red pepper flakes. The next step is going to be to blend together some chicken broth and these roasted red peppers. This is my first time ever buying these. I'm not very familiar with them. I used the smallest amount for one of Josh's lunches, and on the back of the jar it said that you had to use it within like 7 days, I think, after you opened it. So that was my inspiration for making this. I didn't want those to go bad. And my brother got me this new immersion blender. It's the KitchenAid one, and it works so good. If you've watched my older videos, you know my struggles with my old immersion blender, so I'm so thankful to have that one. So to that, I'm also adding in some heavy cream and hot sauce, as well as all those spices that I just mentioned in the beginning of this clip. So while I was preparing that sauce, I was also boiling a pot of water. I salted it, and I'm going to be using this whole box of rigatoni. The recipe actually recommended to use linguine, but I didn't have enough, so that's what I'm using. Really, any pasta will work. So while that was boiling, I started on the sauce. So I melted down some butter, and I added in lots of minced garlic. I'm going to let those two things cook together for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to add in some tomato paste. The kind in the tube is heaven sent, I swear. It keeps it fresh for so long. It's so convenient. And that's another thing that you guys told me about. So thank you for that. I let that cook with the garlicky butter for a couple minutes. And then I added in a little bit of just some plain all-purpose flour. And that's going to form like a little paste. I'm going to let that cook for a couple minutes to let the flour cook out. And now I can finally start to add in that chicken broth, roasted red pepper, heavy cream, hot sauce mixture, and I'm just going to get that stirred together really well. And as soon as that starts to boil, it's going to start to like instantly thicken into this beautiful sauce. And the last ingredient is going to be some Parmesan cheese. So finally went to the store and got me a block of the fresh Parmesan cheese, grated that up, and I added in a little bit of that, and I just stirred that until it melted. Then I can finally add in that cooked and drained pasta, and I'm just going to gently fold that into the sauce until it's all nice and coated. So this turned out really good. I wouldn't say it was a favorite for me. It was just really different, but like I said, I mean, it was good, and it was a big hit with the kids, surprisingly. Even my pickiest eater went back for seconds, and he had it for lunch the next day, so I was very happy I made it. I just served it with some cheesy garlic bread and another side salad. So that is going to wrap up this video. I really hope that it was helpful. I want to thank you guys so very much for watching. I hope you all have an amazing week, and I will see you in my next video.